I'm a little bit worried about where this country is going with
Yeah.
ICE. And then I don't know if you saw some videos about police officers. There's one in Miami Beach that showed up to a woman's house because of a
Yeah.
post she made on Facebook. And it wasn't even, she was just saying that, she doesn't like the genocide, essentially. And then, there was another incident, I think in Texas, where they showed up. It's just scary. And then these ICE officers asking people for their papers and beating up U.S. citizens. And they have the full backing of the administration. And then something that was even more terrifying for me is I saw this video of Pam Bondi, and I'll just play it for you, and we can talk about it.
Sure.
I want to tell you a story right here in Florida. You've probably heard of it. It's not a crime of great violence, but in my opinion, it's a crime of great significance. I give college presidents my personal cell phone, and I say, if you need anything, call me. My phone rang one day. I was sitting in the office, and it was the president of Florida State University. And he said, something just happened. Yeah, a young woman, a student, threw her phone, cursed, attacked a young student, a young man, male student, who was playing basketball because he was wearing an IDF shirt. She was a student, he was a student. I spent the next few hours on the phone. I called my U.S. attorney, I called the state attorney, called law enforcement, and I guess she went through the system as it should, and she now is kicked out of Florida State University. But little things are the big things, and that sends a strong message that you can't behave that way anymore in our country. You can't bully other students simply because they're Jewish. And you think they're better than they are. Not going to happen under Donald Trump's presidency.
Yeah. Right.
Well,
I mean, it's incredible that this went all the way up to the attorney general, a conflict between two students. Sure. Okay. That the girl that threw the phone should be disciplined but that's just let's be honest, this is a minor incident. And then the other thing I would point out is that it's not because that the male student, and I think, in most cases, the male student should have, who doesn't actually have a political axe to grind, would not report it or anything. It could be embarrassed to say that, oh, yeah, I'm a victim because this girl threw a phone at me, say, hey, don't do that, man, or whatever, and that's it, right? But it's because he's wearing an IDF shirt. That's the thing. If you could be Jewish and wearing a Palestinian flag, that would send out a different message. It's the political message. It's not the ethnicity.
Yeah. I mean, it's just crazy that she would even tell this story like it's a badge of honor. We're talking about what, a 20-year-old boy that plays basketball, clearly probably in pretty good shape. Right. Some girl says some mean things to you, so you have to run to the administration and then get the Attorney General of the United States to devote hours of her time to make sure that this girl gets expelled.
Right.
It's insane. I mean, because like you said, he's wearing an IDF shirt, which what most people think is the IDF is engaged in a genocide. Right. That's it has nothing to do with the fact that he's Jewish, like you said.
Yeah.
It's the IDF shirt. Like that would send most people that see that would just look at that in horror. It's something that people look at and think, yeah, they associate genocide with it. We've seen all these videos of these children being killed, these women being killed. It's nuts, but it shows the position of the administration, just how Zionist they are. If I had any hope that there would be some rationality that we would act in our own self-interest. When I saw this video, I'm like, it's not, like we're completely controlled by the Jewish lobby here. It's just insane because they want to say how it's so anti-Semitic to point out these things like, oh, a lot of Zionists are in charge of the media and the narrative. It's like, okay, well, they go out by CBS News. We see the Attorney General coming out and making this big speech about how we expelled students that behave in any way unacceptable towards a Jewish student. It's like, okay, well, this is feeding into that stereotype. You do understand that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah, also, I just say in general, this is part of this, of an overall very disturbing phenomenon that we see here, and that is that the administration is applying a lot of pressure to all these different universities, the campuses, and this is just one small example of it, to really shut down free speech. They are those campuses that allowed protests to take place, which, again, I grew up in the 60s in Berkeley. I remember that's just part of life in the United States, campus protests. But those universities that didn't immediately, expel all their students or, impose severe penalties on students that protested are losing funds. It is actually really has had a chilling effect. So now that you have university campuses, administrations around the country that are really suppressing free speech. And again, there are teachers, professors, even tenured professors who are finding that they can't teach anymore because of this. So there is a real, I think, clearly a free speech issue here. And this is from an administration, from one reason that this administration is now in power is that a lot of people were sick of what we call cancel culture, that really was largely on the left, prior to Donald Trump's taking office. But they have immediately, they made some statements when he first said no more cancel culture, and then they established their own form of cancel culture, and that's what we're seeing right here.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it worries me. I think we're going to see more and more crackdown, more and more censorship. It seems like, the Zionists, the Israelis, they understand that they're losing this PR war, and they're being very frustrated that no matter what they do, spending millions, billions of dollars to buy off influencers, to buy mainstream media networks, none of it's working. Purchasing, getting control of TikTok, all of this stuff. It's still not working. So what's the one option to have left? Censorship. We got to pull those levers, shut people up. Let me actually show you the video of the incident that she's talking about, just so you can see how benign it is. There's bad language, just so everybody listening, if you don't want to hear bad language, but I'm sure everyone's fine.
Fuck Israel, free Palestine, put it on fucking Barstool FSU. I really don't give a fuck. You're an ignorant fucking son of a bitch.
That was the incident.
Yeah. That went to the Attorney General.
That one, she had to drop everything she was doing. Oh my God, I got to work on this. I got to hit and ensure that he gets fired, that she gets expelled. I mean, it's insane. Whereas, we have Renee Good was shot in the face 3 times and killed. And instead of saying at least that this was an excess use of force and we're going to look into it and make sure that this behavior doesn't happen, U.S. citizens, don't worry, you will be safe. Like, that's what we needed to hear. Instead, they labeled Renee Good as a domestic terrorist and said that we got the full backing of ICE. And it's just like, oh boy, where are we going now? It's worrying.
It is. Again, this is another example of where the administration, they came in with a lot of support for a new immigration policy. And this is actually something that you find on both sides of the spectrum. Biden himself had to reverse his very, very lax border policies because it was hurting him within his own party. And there's one reason, too, I think that, again, that Donald Trump was elected. This is not something that we bargained for. People that wanted to see the immigration laws enforced wanted to see them enforced, according to law, and obviously that's not what's happening. These incidents are very troubling, and you can say, any sort of massive operation, there are going to be some incidents and there are going to be some bad apples. But when those incidents occur, you have to show that, these things are unacceptable. And I find the most troubling thing about that Renee Good incident was the reaction of the administration, Trump, Vance, and others. Simply, labeled her as a domestic terrorist. And the responsible thing would have been to say, at the very least, just simply say, okay, no, we need to investigate this fully and, and determine what happened. And if, indeed this was unjustified, this person needs to be punished. That's the truth. That's what you need to say, but we didn't get that. And again, it just shows, I think, a real disregard for the rules, and for, again, we had a problem on the left, but now that we have the right and power, it's not that, now we have a restoration of order, we have, or a reestablishment of the rules. We have new excesses. We have we're introducing, again, just an arbitrariness and obviously any. You look at that and you do see a government that's out of control.
Well, what do you think we can expect? Do you think that they can really get away with increased censorship? I just feel like my only reason to hope is that I think enough people are aware of the situation when they do attempt to, maybe remove people from YouTube, like our channel or whatever, that people will know where it's coming from, and that there will be an even bigger backlash. Everybody knows. It's so obvious now. At least I hope it's obvious.
I hope so. Right. I think that the Israelis, again, Netanyahu called this the Eighth Front, right? Again, the war that's being waged over the control of information, over media outlets. I think this is a war that cannot be won. Now, again, I think immigration we have to set aside. That's not Zionism. That's something else. Okay, that is. But of course, when we're talking about, anti-IDF protests or behavior in campuses, we are talking about that. There's no question about it. Well, anyway, they're waging this war. I think that they're going to fail. Sometimes I worry, though, that maybe they'll succeed, but I don't see how. So far it seems like it's actually the steps that they have taken have actually convinced a lot of people, of the reality of of Zionist influence in this country. And I think it's going to continue to be that way. It's not like it used to be a couple of decades ago when you just had, 3 major broadcasting systems. And if you controlled those, you controlled pretty much, and maybe half a dozen major papers. And you controlled those, you can control the discourse. That's no longer the case. I don't think they can control it. And when they make obvious efforts to control it, okay, maybe they get control of CBS, they get control of TikTok. But then there are all these other platforms, and it's going to be a whack-a-mole. They're not going to be able to get it all. It's not for a lack of trying. Actually, just to maybe change the topic slightly. We've had these incidents in Syria recently. It's more than an incident. It's just the al-Jawlani or al-Sharaz government or his forces anyway, are taking control of the Kurdish areas in northeastern Syria. Okay, well, I was just researching about that. I saw a very, very interesting YouTube podcast with Kavor Kalmasyan. He's the Armenian, he's a man of Armenian descent, but who, was born and grew up in Syria. And so is very, very familiar what's going on there. And he has the channel called Syriana Analysis. And he was interviewing another reporter who, again, who really focuses on Syria and actually had spent most of her time within the Kurdish areas. Both of these reporters who have been experienced, been reporting on the area for a long time. And they both said, I think I mentioned this earlier about Kavor Kalmasyan, that they had been approached by the Israelis. He several times offered money if he would, project, start expressing pro-Israeli opinions. Start telling the Syrians, you need to, the Israel, your hope is with Israel. And and he knows that there have been many, many people approached. He's just one. They've approached him several times. And of course, he refused again and again, rejected the offers of money. But he knows that many others accepted them. And they're working for the Israelis, influencers in different parts of Syria. And this other woman, she too, she said she was approached several times. There's just this all out, you see part of that eighth front, it's not just the U.S., it's around the world. And it's something that the Israelis really work hard on. And they may be, to some extent, successful in a place like Syria because so many people are so desperate that they really are hurting for money. They really are suffering terrible poverty. They really are scared, and and somebody offers them a helping hand. They will go again. They'll just lay their misgivings aside and accept it.
Do you think when we talk about this eighth front that there's like a section of Mossad or the IDF that is just completely dedicated to this, and they build up strategy? Okay, like this is our messaging, and this is how we're going to disseminate it.
Yeah,
and they have their usual dissemination methods.
Yeah, it's well known. There are Hasbara teams. Hasbara. That's something funded by the Israeli government. I don't know exactly like under which agency they operate the Hasbara teams, but they exist, and they are funded by the U.S. by the Israeli government. Not
Which
everything they
the
do
US.
is, so some of it is directly government controlled, and another is indirectly, through people, various people that are allied with Israel. Zionist Jews that live in other countries that offer up their services. And I think that's true of the person that approached Kavor Kamassian. He wasn't, apparently at least to his knowledge, he was not an agent of the Israeli government. But he was clearly working for Israeli interests, and he would constantly refer to we want this, we want that, and he would kind of wonder what the we was. I think the we is the Israel, and the Zionists.
Yeah, well, it seems like the messaging that the Zionists are trying, that the Hasbara teams are doing here within the West, which I think is pretty effective, is this instead of just focusing on anti-Semitism in Israel because they realize that's backfiring, their focus now is that Islam is not compatible with the West, that there's this civilizational battle. And unfortunately, I think they are having some success with that. So the way things are going, maybe there will be increased censorship laws, but they will cast a wider net to something that they know that there is a strong base, that people are in the United States are receptive to the idea that Islam is this the enemy of Christianity, and that's the battle. And so they will be more accepting to round up people or silence people under this umbrella, and with it they can throw any dissent of Israel under there, because that fits under that. They can make it fit under that umbrella. It's like, oh, they support a terrorist group, Hamas, whatever it is. That's what I'm afraid is going to happen, and that this, they may not be able to censor everybody fully, but they could maybe start some type of, almost like a civil war, that there's this huge rip because they keep on pushing that messaging that we're in an existential battle. Western civilization is under attack, and it's under attack from Islam. It's under attack from Muslims. And so, we just have to stand united and use any method possible, to protect Western civilization. And Israel is the leader and at the forefront of this battle.
Yeah. Well, that's long been Netanyahu's message, that he's been pushing that for a while. I understand they are pushing that particularly hard recently. It's maybe decided it's best let's not talk about Gaza. Let's just talk about Muslims, right? Because they understand talking about Gaza doesn't help them. I'm sure they've had success in the past, and they will continue to have some success. I know that they're particularly targeting Christian Zionists, certain Christian, mega churches, and especially in certain parts of the country. And they're targeting AI. They will have successes, but whether it's sufficient, whether I'm sure they'll convince certain demographic groups, maybe that are already predisposed, and they'll keep them on board. Maybe they'll be able to keep the Christian Zionists on board, and other groups. They'll continue to exercise a great deal of influence over Congress, just through the use of money. But we have to admit that is starting to, they're losing their grip there. Increasingly, candidates on the Democratic side of the aisle are telling their voters that I'm not taking AIPAC money. That's, it used to be it was a given. You just took AIPAC money. And now they're saying we're not doing it. So I see them losing their grip, but they're going to fight hard and they're going to hold on to what they can. And I think I'll repeat what I said earlier. It's just like if it looks like they're really losing their grip, then we could see even extra constitutional. Well, I think we could say we're already seeing extra constitutional measures, this crackdown on dissent on the campuses, or at least that verges on it. And we may continue in that direction, whether we get real outright, authoritarian suppression. If the Zionist establishment can't maintain control, through completely legal and constitutional means, they may increasingly resort to other means.
Yeah, I mean, the Zionists are clear that they'll go to any lengths to try to fight and win this battle, but I feel like it doesn't matter what they do, they can never win this war. If the world is going into a multipolar world, then can Israel even exist in a multipolar world?
It'll be a lot harder. The unipolar world, it was much better for them, and they would like to maintain it, but I don't think they can. So yeah, their position will weaken. In that sense, we're not just talking about the battle for the minds of hearts of Americans and Europeans, but just the position of the United States in the world. That's critical to the Zionist project. Of course, is the strength of the United States, and as the U.S. weakens, so does the Zionist project weaken.
Yeah, and the multipolar world is inevitable. So
yeah,
a
lot of so many of these trends are looking in the short run. Again, it just looks very, very grim for the Palestinians and for the Syrians and everybody, that lives in a country that borders Israel. In the long run, I think I still believe that the Zionist project is doomed. The long-term trends are going against Zionism.
When you say it's doomed, does that mean you think that all the Jews in Israel will flee somewhere else? Like that's what it means?
It's possible. It's possible.
What country would take them in? How would this work?
Well, there are a lot of countries that have very, very close relationships with Israel.
It's going to be, what am I talking about? It's going to be America.
You're right, America, Germany,
Well, I was thinking about Argentina because of those fires. If they wanted to, because I think they want an ethno-state, right? Will they be okay with being in a country where they are not they don't have their ethno-state?
Yeah, I don't know. We're getting, who knows? Maybe it'll be reborn somewhere else in the world. That's possible. There were, again, before the Zionism took root or established its first outposts in Palestine, really at the beginning of the 20th century. There was talk about, maybe establishing a Jewish state in Madagascar. Well, yeah, that was Hitler's idea, but, actually so I'm not going to talk about that one. But in Uganda, my birthplace, it was suggested the Brits, because they had control of the Palestine at that time. They actually suggested Uganda.
I also heard Argentina was suggested as well. Argentina and Uganda. Yeah.
It could have been. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow, it would have been a lot different back then. I mean, who knows? Maybe they could have actually succeeded with their ethno-state because they would have gone to, if they went to Argentina, for example, they probably could have got a huge swath of land that's uninhabited. It could have succeeded if it was uninhabited. The problem is they they took over a place that was inhabited, that was full of people, and just started killing them and kicking them out. It's just
right. And
didn't end. That's not going to end well. It's just it's too unjust. It's so unjust that no matter how much money and power and propaganda, there'll always be people that will want to fight back against it because it's that unjust.